Hey everybody, this is Angela Damiani with Milwaukee. Welcome to a very, very special episode of Making New Possible. I have maybe the most special guest in the world on with me today, my mother, Ellen Hermann, who thought perhaps it would be really fun to break down what was probably the most interesting, insightful, and maybe even important event that Milwaukee has ever produced this past weekend. It was called You Were There, and what started as a 40th birthday party definitely got away from us in terms of the production. But I thought, as I'm sort of unpacking quite literally all the stuff from the production, actually reflecting on the experience with my mom, it might be something sort of interesting. So, Mom, welcome to the program.
Well, hi, everyone. Now, I'm somebody that has strong feelings about big decade birthdays, going all the way back to when I turned 20. So I could appreciate that 40 was a big deal for you. In 2000, I turned 40, and that one hit me big. I embraced it and thumbed my nose at it, though, so to speak, by throwing a big pool party in my backyard with my best friend, who was born 3 days before me. We had many joint friends, as our mothers had been friends, and about 50 people were there. The highlight was a live Irish band. People talked about that party for weeks afterwards. I felt well placed at 40 for doing it, probably because entertaining and throwing parties exercises my creativity and is my true love language. But you did something much larger and different, and I have some questions about it, if you're ready to answer.
I'm totally ready.
So what came up for you in general about turning 40?
You know, I was thinking about that when you sent these questions over, because when I turned 30, I had a big shindig. Do you remember we went to that farm for 3 days? And it was a very different party. It was sort of like a decentralized party. I told people I was going to be at this farm for 3 days in the west side of the state. I can't remember where we were.
In Madison.
Yeah. But I invited everyone I knew and I said, come by for an hour or a day or a sleepover, remember? And I remember then that I said, then when I turn 40, I want to host a roast. And I thought it would be fun to have more people to come together and actually be together in one unison thing. And I did almost nothing with the idea until I turned 39. And then a couple people who came to that were like, are you still going to host that roast? And so I had this percolated notion oh, yeah, that's right. I said I was going to do something big for 40. But beyond maybe the party itself or knowing I wanted to have some kind of public spectacle, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be at the middle point of my life. You know, your mom and dad's dad both died when they turned 70. And then their partners lasted until their late 80s and early 90s. So if I really split the difference here and think about my own longevity, I'm probably actually at the midpoint of my life, just statistically, with that genetic soup that I've been given. And so I've been thinking about what does that mean? What have I accomplished? Do I feel satisfied with that, knowing that maybe I only have 40 years left? And what else do I want to do? And all of that was it was a lot, honestly, emotionally to sort of unpack. And I think it was why I knew I wanted to do something that felt really grand and that involved a lot of people. I wanted this to be something that was interactive for the night itself, but for the weeks and months that led up to it, it was something that lots of people helped contribute to. And that piece, most people who just came for the couple hours didn't get a chance to see, but it was I needed to do that sort of onion peeling with other people in order to cross over this threshold.
So it sounds like you're saying that the idea was already born at 30, but lay dormant, and then at 39, it started to be resurrected because you were inching to 40. You called this party your art project. When did you first feel inspired to create the art project? It was initially teasingly called a roast, but then it became this more elaborate, immersive, sometimes interactive experience. So when did you first feel inspired to create that? And what were you thinking and feeling about such a big birthday?
Well, honestly, it was my husband, James, who said, He said, I don't know if you could handle a roast. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I just think, you'd be sort of like an emotional wreck if people really said what they thought about you. And then I was like, well, what do you think people have to say about me that I don't already know? I was thinking it would be a playful, fun, sort of delightful, again, interactive evening. But he was sort of dissuading me from that. And then I thought, well, what is it that I'm looking for? And honestly, this fall, a dear friend of mine who's my exact age passed away, and we have children who are the same age, and she had the most beautiful funeral. Because she's just 40, there were a lot of people there. And I thought, God, you don't get a chance to say the things you want to say to people, especially in this moment of our life when we're taking care of my elderly father-in-law and we have small children and we both have businesses. It's so easy to be busy in life and to think oh, I'll get to it. Whatever it is, I'll get to it. And so that the next evolution was maybe it's a living funeral. Maybe people could sign up and share their, but to be honest with you, the thought of sitting through people saying nice things about me, it just sounded so cringy and awful. I don't think I would have wanted to do that. So I met with my good friend, Matt Kemple, who has owned a playhouse, and he has run the comedy festival here in Milwaukee for 20 years, and he owns Laughing Tap at the comedy house that'll be coming to life later this spring downtown. And I said, you just got to workshop this with me. I want people to share memories. I want it to be interactive, but I don't really want to sit through people eulogizing me. That's not what I want to do as a shared experience. And so we were tossing it around back and forth, and he said, well, what if it isn't people sharing their memories with you? What if it's you sharing your memories with them? And what if some of it was archival? You could have your yearbooks out or whatever. And it was like a flash of lightning. From that conversation, suddenly I could see the essence of this. And I honestly went into a spiral of creative mania. We met on a Friday afternoon. I don't think I slept all weekend. I was up writing all of these tangible memories I could think of, and then thinking okay, what would be a thing I could physically show? You know what I mean? To make that a memory that was come to life. So yeah, it took a little while, but to be honest with you, it really hadn't sort of come to me as a concept until about 4 months ago. So the fact that it all came together in 4 months is really a feat.
Well, I was there, and considering how elaborate it was, how much space it took up, how many different phases of your life were represented, 4 months does seem pretty remarkably short to have put that all together. Would you like to share some of the iterations that were in your mind's eye as it was taking shape? So you mentioned how you got the lightning bolt start to it, but how did you get to deciding which of the scenes of your life you were going to have us experience again with you, or experience in some cases for the first time?
Yeah, honestly, I started with just what could I remember. And at first I was just writing random things down. So I was thinking about our camping trips as little kids to Big Basin, or my own infertility journey in the early parts of my 20s. These are sort of good and quite frankly, sad moments. And then I actually, this is me just being organized. I wrote them all down in a notebook, and then I transferred them to a spreadsheet, and I categorized them 0 to 9, 10 to 19. And I tried to make sure. At first I thought, well, maybe I'll have 40, and that'll be sort of poetic if I have 40 things. But I had way too many memories to fit into 40. It was a long spreadsheet that was organized by decade. And then with each memory, I was trying to think, okay, do I have an object to show here? And if I have an object, that's great. But if I don't have an object, what is it that I'm remembering? Is it a smell? Is it a taste? Is it a sound? Is it just a feeling? And how am I going to be able to recreate that? And to be honest with you, it was very easy for me to remember. I have my first communion dress. I can have my first communion dress on display. But how to put together some of the more immersive rooms took me a little while. And there was actually an intense amount of frustration on my end, because my traditional, or the process we use at Milwaukee when we do experience design is typically place-based. So what does that mean? It means that a client comes to us and says, I want to host something in this park, in this building, in this plot of land. And then from that, we're creating something that helps to accentuate that location. And I felt very rudderless actually for the first couple of weeks of this, because I kept thinking okay, I know I have all of this random stuff and I have these memories, but without a location, I don't know what I'm talking about here. I don't know how I'm going to put this together because I needed to physically walk through a space to have it come together. And I toured a bunch of different stuff. I toured some classic event spaces that I knew pretty quickly, like, okay, the thing I want to build is going to take a couple weeks to build, and I can't be in and out in a normal rental, you know what I mean? Which is like rent it for 3 hours, but you have like an hour to set up and an hour to take down. I was like, let's cross that off the list. And then I went to some very non-traditional spaces, some really cool warehouses in Walker's Point, in the Valley. And those were super interesting and really raw and not traditional. So we could have access to the space for a period of time, but they were rough. We would have needed to bring in heat and things like that I was like, well, it's February. You know, what's the likelihood of that? And, you know, sort of in a kismet way, my friend Julie Kaufman, who's the owner of Fixed Development, posted that she has a vacancy in the Clockshatter Creamery building in Walker's Point. And she posted the kind of rack sheet, you know what I mean, that shows the layout of the space. And I messaged her to say, well, you know, I think you're looking for another proper tenant, but is there any way you would lease it to me for a month? Because I think it could be sort of perfect for what I want. And as soon as I went in and saw all the tiny rooms, I thought, oh, this is how we do it. It's something you actually have to open a door or a closet to move into. It'll be a lot easier for me to fill a bunch of 7 by 9 foot micro offices than it would be for me to build something from scratch in an open warehouse with the bays between columns. From there, I think the space really called to me. And even though I had the whole thing written out after we had decided that, and the written out thing is a 60-page document. Like when I finally started to put together, where is this going to go? What do we need? What supplies? What's the sensation that'll be in each place? It wasn't until we got the keys 4 weeks ago, today actually, and I was in the space that suddenly it became alive. Because of course you have an idea about something, but as you're bringing the objects in, you're like, well, this isn't going to work. You know what I mean? This table's too big, or I'd look at these terrible, and no offense, Julie, but like these blinds. Like, what are we doing about all these blinds in here? Like, are we using them? Or are we not using them? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So the space really called to me and really kind of brought the idea forth once I was able to physically be in it.
So the shape helped you shape it. That
Exactly.
makes sense. Well, don't lose your 60 pages because Bill Clinton says everyone needs to start their memoir before age 40 because they won't remember things.
Sure.
And there's a very interesting exercise that Julia Cameron, the author of several books, one of which is The Artist's Way, suggests that you begin a writing practice about your memory or your memoir, for your memoir is what I'm trying to say, by incorporating exactly what you're talking about. How did it feel? What did it taste like? What did it look like? What did it seem like in increments of your life? 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, so on and so forth. And I mean, thinking back to both of those two suggestions, I think you've already got the bones of the memoir up to age 40 all ready for you. And I think it'll be fun if someday, instead of just making it an art project that people can walk through and touch and smell and eat warm plums and all the other things that were available to us, you could write it out and make it come alive in a written form because you've thought about it at all and you've already broken it down. Maybe not in 5-year increments, but certainly infancy and early childhood and, late grade school and high school and so on and so forth. Now, I've known you to be a private person and almost introverted as an adult. What inspired you to expose yourself in such vulnerable ways? And I'm thinking of the infertility scene and the video message to your firstborn as the example, because that seems like a remarkably big moment in your life and a very private one for a lot of people. And I would think especially private for a very private person.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing people don't realize about me is how introverted I am. My life is very public and I produce public events. So I'm around a lot of people and it means in my downtime, I need a lot of decompression time. And to be honest with you, I was so fixated on finishing it that it wasn't until the Wednesday before the Saturday that I realized I had 210 people RSVP'd. And they were all coming to see me and that they were all going to want to touch me. I was like, this is why we didn't have a real wedding, because I didn't want to be the center of attention. I didn't want everyone to have to come up to me and greet me, and I would have to interact with them. I just sort of had blacked that part out of my mind. I was so fixated on creating it. But to your question about why I wanted to show more private moments, I felt like I wanted to be truthful about what the first 40 years of my life is like. And while I feel really blessed and I have lived a very full life, not all of it has been, Instagram polished and filtered. And I felt like it would be weird to just have it be, I don't know, those silly plaques that I've won for my businesses or the professional photos of the events. I felt like I wanted it to be something that people could relate to and see. But I'm not going to lie to you. There were many moments in this, particularly in the middle of the night when it would wake me up, where I would think, like, am I ready to share this with so many people? And after the invitations went out and people started responding to it, I felt like, well, now I guess I have to, because it's happening. And that did produce some anxiety, but I felt, I don't know, called to. And what has been interesting in the 5 days since the event is the number of people who've reached out who didn't know about an aspect of my life. And even though we know each other, we hadn't previously shared that, who have said, I had that same experience during COVID. I had that same experience with my husband. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's maybe the most beautiful part about art, is that you can reflect back something that's true about life and have it evoke something in someone else.
Well, that's what art is supposed to do. I guess it's interesting to me to hear you say that people think they know you, but now they kind of do know you, or at least they know you on a more authentic level or a deeper level, not just what they think they know about you, which I think there's always that. I liken that to people that I knew first through their writing. My husband was like that. He was a pen pal of mine when we were children, and his writing persona is very, very different than his public persona. His public persona is knowable. He's a pleasant person. He is nice to talk to. He is interesting. He will share things, but it's only in the written form that you really see this other side of him, which follows the adage, still waters run deep. Very, very deep thinking person. When he writes it, he can express it. In real life, not as much. He would prefer to be the person kind of not in the spotlight and does best with just one-on-one. There's no way that he could have ever exposed himself as you did in a party like that. As a matter of fact, when he walked through it with me, he was very uncomfortable, and he was saying, does she really want people to know that about her? Or why would she tell people that? I mean, that's just, nothing that I would ever, put out so publicly. Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. Did you walk through the various rooms with your guests, especially the motherhood scene, to see their reactions? I did several times, and I really enjoyed watching all the mothers sigh, roll their eyes, and begrudgingly put the little children's treasures in their purse or pocket. They totally got it.
Yeah, my one regret is, I'm not kidding, I probably spent hundreds and hundreds of hours in the space trying to get it all together, but that it wasn't all lit and ready to go until it was time to go. And what I mean by that is that we had tested the projections and the monitors and the sound and all the lighting, but for many of the rooms, there were actually, I called them interveners, but they were actors we had hired to help bring some of the memories alive, because I didn't want it to be that you were just sort of, walking through Princess Diana's museum of her dresses and looking at that. I wanted you to feel the feelings. And I had told the interveners that, I want you to stay in character, even if it causes frustration for the guests, because they're asking you, is there meat in this lumpia or whatever? I want you to say the line over and over, and for it to feel almost dreamlike, you're dreaming, but you can't get out. And so it wasn't all ready to go until 6:00, but you had come and James and the kids had come, and I very, very much wanted to show you guys your Easter eggs I had hidden. And so I felt compelled, as soon as you guys came, before everyone else showed up, to take you through to those. But then by the time we were done with that, the sort of floodgates had opened. And so I didn't actually even walk through the whole thing once it was all on. which is why I've been like poring over all of the like pictures and videos, because even though I know what it was supposed to feel like, I didn't have a second actually to like be in all of it once it was finally done. And so yes, for some people I walked through them with, but I was intentional about wanting to see. So for instance, one of the rooms was called Getting Geared Up. And all of the pictures on the walls are the professional photos of the beautiful events we've hosted, which I think are what people think of when they think of Milwaukee. They think of the event they go to, but most people don't realize it's weeks and months of preparation. And then the day of, it feels like you're suiting up. You know what I mean? Like lathering sunscreen on you, and the whole room smelled like sunscreen. You're putting on bug spray. You're packing your backpack so that you can have like several pairs of sneakers for when your feet get too tired, and maybe at one point you're gonna have to put a dress on. You know what I mean? Like you're just sort of like having to get geared up. And then it had a bunch of the bins we carry with all the gear in it as well. And I walked through it with Rita from my team, and in the corner was a mannequin in a ripped garbage bag, and she said, "Oh my God, is that me?" And I said, "It is." There was a night market, we got rained out, and she was like, "We have to break it all down. The street has to open at midnight." So we were all in garbage bags following her lead in the rain, trying to like haul everything back into the space. And so I just wanted to see her reaction, you know what I mean? And I did that with a couple of guests. Like, to have her recognize herself in it meant something to me.
Well, what about all the scenes that were more personal and without a lot of explanation? For those of us that have known U.S. family for 40-ish years, we understood a lot of the inside jokes because they were shared memories. But what about the rest of the guests?
You know, it's so interesting because for some things I was hoping they would ring true as a life experience. So for example, I had 3 women come to me at the party and say, "I've tried to get into the motherhood room and I've been told it's not my time. Maybe next time. It wasn't meant to be," which was what the interviewer said when there was only at least 4 people in the room. I wanted that room to have the dramatic effect of being dark and sad, and then the lights going on and the music blaring and the interveners passing you pebbles and stuff. And all 3 of those women said, "That's exactly what people said to me." Like that sensation of like, it didn't work again, and you're being told in the nicest way that people are trying to be polite and, you know, give you condolences. So even though maybe they didn't know that about me, I think I did a good job creating shared experiences that were real and true. And I was hoping that, you know, maybe they wouldn't understand every single joke, but that the experiences themselves sort of meant something. And then the other thing I've heard, which has been really interesting, and I've been asking people that I've seen this week since the party, is if you were to do this, what would you have just like put on display? And people had all kinds of ideas about that. I think the level of vulnerability, even if people didn't understand like what a little crab shell meant to me or whose Easter egg that was for, you know what I mean? Like this idea that I chose that and that it was placed in a very specific way, I think inspired people to sort of reflect for themselves. And I have heard from a ton of people who've been like, "I've decided to go to my attic and pull down my bins of my special stuff." You know what I mean? Like the stuff that you keep for God knows what reason. And I don't know when you're going to look at it, except people wanted to go look at their own stuff this week because they saw all my stuff on display.
Well, and I had an experience like that too. I have photos of things. I don't really have as many memories tucked away, and I guess it's because I moved away and moved around, and you keep things until all of a sudden it's going to cost $3.75 a pound to move it, and you decide that you really can give up your dried wedding bouquet. You can. It's not really worth the money to move it. But I've been very intrigued to go up into my attic and just find the pictures and just feel the feelings that you feel when you go back in time through a photograph. Was anybody, did you sense at all, was anybody that wasn't understanding things like you're in the dark room and there's the swimming pool and there's the 2 lawn chairs and there is the voiceover of a real person who was somebody that spoke in that scenario a long time ago, offering you a warm plum? If they didn't get it, was anybody walking around going, "What is this? This is weird. I don't even want, why should I eat this?"
I know. The warm plum, honestly, I have gotten a lot of feedback about the warm plum. That they were weirded out by it. And that it was creepy that like the intervener was kind of sitting tucked under the tree. You know what I mean? Like hiding. And B, that they were pleasantly surprised at how delicious a warm plum is, because, most people don't eat them warm. And the childhood memory that is associated to is the woman that used to caretake for us as little kids had fruit trees, and we had sort of free range to eat whatever we scavenged in the yard. And often the fruit was like heated by the sun. And so I was trying to recreate that sensation of that sort of bright, juicy, warm, you know what I mean? Sweetness. But yeah, totally. I have gotten so many questions about people saying like, what was with the cherubs in the closet? Like, what is this? And some people I have felt compelled tell the whole story to, and others I feel like, did you like it? And I just want to hear like, what was the sensation that it brought up for them? Because it doesn't really matter to me or really to them if they have all the context, as much as I think, did it evoke something in you? You know what I mean? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Like, I think it's okay to not like things. And I think the surprise and delight that the different textures of the room, and I tried to have at least 2 of your senses enacted in each space. I didn't want it to be that you were just looking at something. I needed you to be looking and hearing, or hearing and tasting, or, you know what I mean? Like, how do you have that be that there's multi-sensory experiences in each space? And I'll tell you this, it was very interesting. I had a very specific idea for my high school experience. I wanted to show, I spent most of my high school like kind of hiding in the art department, particularly in the dark room. So I knew making a dark room was really easy, right? It's a small room with the trays, and then you make it red. But I was thinking about the 9/11 moment and how discombobulating that was. And really the first time I became aware of the world at large, of the news. I don't have a recollection of watching the news before 9/11, and of the president, and of your political leanings. I don't think I knew where you stood politically until we were watching that presidential address. And do you remember there was a slight delay? He was live, but he didn't start speaking. And I remember you said something like, "Oh, would you just fucking speak?" And I remember thinking, oh, my mom doesn't like the president. Like I didn't know any of that. You know what I mean? And so that room was called Exposure, which was meant to be like literally film being exposed. But there was footage of 9/11 playing. And I don't know if you could hear it in there, but there was an audio track of like a Spanish 101. The instructor was saying like, okay, clase, it's time to get out our lapis. And we're gonna go through some like vocabulary today or whatever. When I made that video of the 9/11 footage and the Spanish 101 class, I showed it to the younger colleagues I have who are all Gen Z, so they're like between 23 and 26, and they were like, what is this? Mostly because they weren't alive during 9/11, so they don't have any context for that. And then I showed it to my husband, who's 5 years older than me, and he was like, 3,000 people died that day. Like, are you making fun of this like world tragedy? And I was like, oh my God, no. And any other millennial that walked in that room or that I told about this was like, yes, I was in Spanish class too. Like, it was like the shared experience. Like, I didn't need to explain any of it to the people whose that was a formative moment. And I do remember Senora Dietrich, we were watching on the TV, said, you know what, Class A, we can't do anything about this right now, so we're gonna just turn this off. And we went, and she probably said, everyone get your lapis out, it's time to like study. It was just like this really bizarre thing that she was just gonna like, wrangle a bunch of 15-year-olds to, try to focus and get some form of worksheets done in the middle of this like world event. I don't know, I guess it is strange to me that like people who are younger and people who are older all have their own memory or no memory of 9/11. But for anyone that was in that, high school age thing, it was really sort of meant to be like a token for them. Remember when this was sort of something that exposed us to the whole world?
Well, that was one of my favorite rooms, and maybe it was because it just made me giggle. And what made me giggle was seeing your art, because I have no amnesia of how melodramatic you were. And also, it was making me smile, but it was also just making me feel just like really happy because, here you were in a real setting doing real art and expressing yourself. Of course, the expressions were very angsty.
So much angst. I was laughing when I found the box of my high school and college art, and I was falling over laughing looking at it because everything is like cup,
yes,
window, like it's like piano keys, like there's just like it's all black and white, which that's pretty typical for a high school darkroom. That's very rare that you would have like a color studio for that. But the high contrast, you know what I mean? Like deep shadow lines.
Yes,
all
deep
of it.
shadow.
It's
Yes,
just like
it's so a cup on a table, so forlorn.
I know. You know what was really fun is I had two friends from high school who I have not seen maybe since high school come, and they were in some of those photos. So when they walked in and saw themselves and their like 15-year-old selves, that was really, really special to have them be like, oh my word, I can't believe you still have this stuff.
So this project was, kind of a year in your mental space, but months putting together physically. You worked on this and you left key people in your life in the dark about what the art project was exactly. You were letting some hints out, not that you were keeping it to yourself, but I think it just sucked you really deep inside yourself and make you unavailable to people. So people that were nosy wanted to know, and we would get some things. I do remember at one point saying to you, is something going on? You're not going to announce that night that you have a terminal illness or something.
No, I remember even I gave you a draft of the invitation and you were like, this is kind of dark.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to a pre-funeral. Like, you're going to die and you don't want to hear all these nice things laying in a box. You want to hear while you're still alive. Like, that's what it felt like. Like, it's not that, right? Tell me it's not that. And then in terms of how much time it took you mentally and emotionally and then actually just physically to put out. Did you worry about it at all, that it was causing you to withdraw, or that it was isolating you from people that were unsure of it, nervous about it, sick of it, frustrated by it? Because,
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on the person. I will say, to build something like this required me to look at different chapters of my life, face some of the uglier bits, and then figure out, like, do I want to represent that in some way? Am I ready to represent that? And there were definitely things I've left, which I'm happy to share, with you. But I don't know. It was bizarre. It was bizarre the way that it's taken over me. And I like to work. I like to be creative. I'm very, very grateful for the level of creativity and expression that I have with work. So I think for the people who are closest to me, it felt normal that I would be obsessively working. I think
they've experienced you going into the zone.
Exactly.
Before.
I think,
but this was somehow.
No, it was more than just being like in a flow state. And because
a big zone. This was
and it required me to not just do it at work, right? So part of what I needed to do was like go to your house on a Sunday night and go through all my baby books and have you tell me stories and me try to figure out, do I remember any of that, or do I just remember the story you've told me? You know what I mean? Because I was trying to figure out what are my memories versus your memories, or even, James and I have been wanting to clean out our attic. I don't know, since we've lived there for 13 years, because, it just becomes this place you dump stuff and hide things in. And so over Christmas break, I was like, well, we're doing this now. And, it's a project that is insurmountable because there's just an enormous amount of stuff that, you have to decide. Are we saving it? Are we donating it? Whatever. And so it bled into my family time for sure. And I would say James in particular, as the weeks got closer, was like, what is happening here? Because I don't know why. I just felt like I wanted it to all be a surprise for him. I really wanted to express to him something that has just been so hard for me to express. He's so naturally effusive with his love, and he's just easier in it. And I don't have that. I'm not that person. And I felt like I wanted to share a big chunk of how I'm feeling about this stage of my life and our life with him in this very dramatic way. And so keeping that a secret from him, he told me yesterday that when he arrived, he was so anxious. He thought not that I was going to announce I was dying, but that I was going to break up with him in public because I had gone so far away, you know what I mean? Emotionally, I had sort of withdrawn to pull this out of myself, which I just thought, why would I invite 210 people to watch? But he was like, I had no idea what was coming, none whatsoever. But to be honest,
would you do it that way again?
Well, so we talked a lot about that as a team yesterday. I think part of the reason people were feeling so joyful and willing to interact with strangers is because there was so many elements of surprise. And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is, as a practice, I think the draw was people like me and they wanted to come to my birthday party and they thought this was a birthday party. What is the premise in future events to have people come to something that they don't quite understand so that we can surprise them? Because I think in this life where everything is so screen based and we feel so overstimulated and stressed all the time, I felt there was a levity to the space that I'm hoping to recreate in other future experiences. And I think it was because it was so discombobulating. People couldn't be, their normal self because they were being interacted with in a way that was so abnormal. And so there's some part of that I want to try to bottle up and figure out. We can't do an interactive immersive archive every time we do an event, but could we take little notes of that and figure out how to apply it in other spaces or places?
So there were many aspects of your life on display there, but obviously, even though there were a lot of them and they kind of went sequentially through what most people, if they had to make an outline, if a person's 40, what would be turning points or, little chapters that would be interesting and would be interesting to other people. But obviously you had to leave some of it out. So how did you decide which ones to keep and which ones to leave out? And why did you leave the ones out that you left out?
Well, I definitely left out parts that were still really raw for me. Things that I, felt like, oh, I'm not done processing this. I don't know how I would represent it. So, I recently sold one of my companies, Nuance, and I was thinking I have sort of a wake of business partners now because I own Milwaukee wholly by myself and it's the only company I own in this moment. And I thought, well, is there something I want to say about that? But it's so fresh. We just closed on Nuance on the 26th, so just days before this event. And I thought, no, I don't know if I'm ready to talk about that, or I don't know if I have a way to express what it feels like to leave such an intimate relationship, because being in business with someone is so intimate. You spend more time with your business partners sometimes than you do with your spouse because you're together all day. In our case with Milwaukee, together all day and all night and most weekends too, and so there were moments that I just felt I don't know if I'm ready or if I have a way to articulate how many emotions, that sort of brings up for me.
Well, maybe it's, as you say, it's just too fresh. You don't understand it. So how could you possibly portray it?
Exactly.
Although, interestingly, your business partners were there. So it's not like it was so traumatic that, you have to cross the street if you ever run into them in town.
No, not at all. And to be honest with you, Ian couldn't make it because his kid was sick. And I was sad about that. I really wanted all of us to be together. All my partners from Rev Collective were there. Obviously, Amanda was there from Nuance and Jer came too. And I don't know how to tell my story without their chapters in it. You know what I mean? I felt like I needed them to be present and be with us.
What did they think of it?
I think they loved it, to be honest with you.
Because those were their Easter eggs.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And them finding where it went. I don't know. How else did I decide not to show things? How did I decide to show things too? What was the original question?
Well, I'm just saying that there's many of your aspects of your life that you couldn't portray because
those other things too. I felt like I was trying to distill down. I didn't want it to be a chronological thing. I didn't want it to be like a timeline that you were walking through. And there were certain things that I felt like a friend of mine asked, is there going to be, I had showed her the map and she was like, is there going to be a room that's your wedding? And I thought, God, that's so interesting to me because I love that I'm married, but my wedding day is not a highlight for me. That's not a moment in my life that I feel like. There are so many other moments, like the day my mother-in-law died, that I felt like we got so much closer together. And I wanted to have Gigi in the piece. I found a voicemail of her telling James how much she loves him. That moment meant more to me than, and maybe that's just because that's what I think marriage is. It's like going through real life stuff together, more than just the pretty dress and the dinner and that sort of fleeting celebration.
Well, and it's interesting that somebody else is, projecting themselves on this. Why wasn't at least a wedding picture, or if your first communion dress is there, why isn't your wedding dress there? And that in my own family, my husband heard you say on the phone the day of, I feel more excited today about this art project and it, coming to life tonight with the party than I did on my wedding day. And he he was sad for a really long time afterwards. He said, if you ever said that to me about our wedding day, I would be destroyed.
I did. I was so excited. And honestly, I was that first night. So we finally finished the installation at 4 p.m. on Friday before Saturday. And that night was the first night I slept all the way through the night in months, because this thing has been haunting me. And I would wake up and be like, gosh, you know what? We need a rug. We need a rug under that crib. It looks like it's just floating in the room. Like, it was like little details would sort of reveal themselves to me. And so it's like when it finally was out of my system, then I could relax and honestly really, really enjoy it and finally be excited about it being there.
Which scene was your favorite?
Oh God, I don't know. I think the one that's sticking out to me is room 14, the hideout, which was supposed to be Sally's backyard. You know, that room didn't come together until Friday afternoon. We had this idea of trying to recreate one of the trees and having that projection map coming from the ceiling with the sound of children playing. But it was missing something. And so Thursday morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I texted my 2 girlfriends and I said, do either of you have a blue plastic kiddie pool? I need a blue plastic kiddie pool. And of course, my friend Jess, who's also perimenopausal and up at 4 a.m, was like, I do, I'll drop it off today. Dina woke up a couple hours later and was like, what is the matter with you two? I was like, it's an art project miracle. I need a plastic kiddie pool. And then once it went in, I was like, God, you know, it's still not done. It's missing something. And so then I was texting my team, like, do any of you have any kind of crappy plastic chairs that you keep out all summer? You know what I mean? That are all worn down. And of course, none of them did, but someone found some on Facebook Marketplace and went out and got them. It was like it came together in the very last moment. It wasn't until all the elements were set that it came together. But I think the thing more than the rooms themselves, the thing I wasn't anticipating, I was so focused on making sure that the memory felt accurate. It felt like how I remember it, that I did not put any thought into what would it feel like to relive the memories with the people I remember them with. And they were so accurate for me that was the most special thing. Like at the very end of the night, a group of my college friends and I ended up in the disco dancing to that music we listened to in our early 20s. And it felt like this swell, like we were all 21 again, kind of scream singing and jumping around and being silly. Like how people, I see my college friends with enough regularity, and we do that thing where you sit around and go, remember that time? You know what I mean? Remember when? But to not just say the memory, to actually relive it together with them, it's like this indescribable thing. Like, who gets to do that? To actually like relive these moments in time. That, I think, was my favorite thing about it, was to be with all of you guys and to have it be made material and real. And honestly, it was the hardest part about taking it down this week. I felt like this deep longing, like I was losing something. And I came home and said to James, like, I feel like I'm like I have to let go, or like there's like a grief, like I don't get to have these memories anymore, which isn't true, because like literally I have to bring all that crap back to my house. I still have all the stuff, but it was something about it being like we could all slip back. Well, it was so
tangible. Now it just goes back into the recesses of your mind, mm-hmm. right? There It was out front and physical, and now it's back in the it's in totes in your attic.
Exactly.
And it's receding now to the back of your mind, as memories do. Would you have had the last scene, which was called what? Maybe in Another Lifetime, if your father had actually showed up?
I thought a lot about that because I wanted to be true about some of those relationships. And he was invited, and I didn't want to pretend that he was like a main character. You know what I mean? Honestly,
I guess I'm asking because I went through it. There was a couple of things you had to explain to me because
mm-hmm.
I didn't know that when you were in Greece, you would go out night clubbing in a dress without underpants.
That was new information for you?
Yeah, that was new information for me. It was all familiar to me, and I did not feel indicted in any way. Mm. It was emotional for me. I was telling one of your friends, or one of the people that was help setting up, when she asked, well, what do you think of all this? I said, well, some of it's a little bit sad. The lullaby room was sad because looking at the picture that you had projected of you sort of, being soothed on my shoulder as a tiny infant. I mean, you're literally days old in the picture. I can recall that sent me back to that time and all the hopes that I had for you. And just, there was other things there that I saw. And those early years were actually the very worst years of my life, not because of you, but because of the circumstances that I was living. And I looked at all that and it just brought back the feeling like, oh my goodness, it wasn't supposed to be like this when she got here. It was supposed to be much better. And is it going to be okay? Well, can I still do what I had always dreamed and wanted for my children under these circumstances? But I didn't feel indicted by anything that I saw. I was just like, yeah, there was that, and there was that. And there was then, as it was progressing along, and then, we're getting to the rooms where there's all these accolades and, stuff. It's like, yeah, in the end, she landed on her feet and it all worked out. And actually, I shouldn't think about it anymore because all those things were the things that forged her the way she is now, and she's just great. But I don't know if your dad would have felt that. And I don't know if he would have showed up that day, would you have closed that room off, or would you have just walked back there with him, or would you let him walk back there and have his own interpretation of it and just see where that led afterwards? Yeah,
it was that night we looked through my baby books, and you have them broken. I think there's 3 volumes. And the first volume is like, that 0 to maybe like 2. And then the second one, he's not in any of the photos. Like it's they're thinner books, so that's why there's multiple of them. But going through them with you, I was like, God, this is so weird that he's like in almost every picture, and then all of a sudden he's not in any pictures. And that piece was called Maybe in Another Life. So what I did is I took a picture of all the pictures, and then it had it spun into like a photo montage with Somewhere Over the Rainbow playing. And it was on a iPad on a pedestal that was spotlit, kind of behind a black curtain down a quiet hallway. A lot of the other rooms were very, very loud. There was a cacophony of sounds as you walked through the hallway. I had actually sent him the video for his birthday because that was one of the first digital assets I finished. And he thanked me for it. He said, most of these photos I don't even remember taking, let alone seeing. But I thought, if he comes, is he going to be sad? I don't know. I guess I just thought, but this is the truth. Like, he was only around until I was really like 2.5 or 3, and then he was gone. And what would our life have been had he been around? Like, it could have been a whole other story that, we've sort of reignited in the recent years as he's become a grandfather and taken more interest in that. But the truth is that he wasn't in any of the other spaces because he wasn't there. And I didn't want to lie about that. I have all kinds of feelings about that. And so I don't know. I don't know what he would have thought, but that's my version of the truth.
Right. Well, you've been talking about a lot of things here, and you might have already touched on this, but in a nutshell for your listeners here, can you articulate what it was you were trying to accomplish by doing this? Was this for you? Was this for us? Was this for your kids? Was this for posterity? What were you trying for?
I mean, I think it definitely was something that needed to come out of me. I've been trying to describe like the relief I feel now this week. And the sensation is that of like having a really pussy zit. And when it finally sort of like, you can actually extract it and you feel like, oh, that hurt. But like now it feels better. Like that's the sensation. Like this was stuff that needed to come up and out. I actually needed to do a recounting of my life. And I don't know why I needed to do it or if it was just attached to this midlife crisis thing. You know what I mean? But I needed to touch all my stuff. I needed to think about where I am in my life. I needed to make amends with some people. I mean, this forced me to interact with people that I have not interacted with in a long time. And even sending the invitations, I mean, lots of people couldn't come, but it re-engaged conversations with people that, I was thinking about, okay, who am I going to invite to this? 432 people that I thought if they saw an obituary, they might come to my funeral. That was like my, filter for picking people. And to interact with those 432 people over the last couple of months, it's like I needed to like call people in. And that part was that was for me. I think for my team, they have never done a couple of things. They've never worked on a project all together. The way that agency models work is you usually have a more senior person and then a couple junior people that work on a project. So our teams can be between 2 and maybe 4 people that huddle around something. And that's just for like pure economics, right? We can't afford to have all of the senior people on every single project because we bill hourly. Having a project that the whole team could work on and contribute to was so fascinating because people were stretching themselves beyond their sort of normal scope. And they really had carte blanche with this. I said, unlike maybe some of our clients that have really specific brand standards, I want us to be more evocative, more weird. And that part was so fun to watch them come in and be like, no, we need a mirror over the sink. People have to be able to look at themselves when they see the pregnancy test. They can't just see the pregnancy test. They have to feel what it feels like to like look in the mirror again. Like them iterating on it. Honestly, that was really healing for me too. And I said that to them on Friday when we had it all installed. Like there are parts of this that were really painful for me to sit through and to move through and to try to recreate, but doing it with a group of the most creative humans on the planet, in my opinion, has put a new patina. Like I'm having a hard time remembering what was the original memory and now what was the recreation, and having them, it's almost like exposure therapy, like having to literally walk through the rooms over and over and over and do it with other people who are like, but what about this? What about this? Like their hype made me feel more hyped. And then, for everyone else, I was hoping that they would, I said this in my little speech, like my artist statement was that I wanted people to remember that like we are more than our sort of token archetypes, which is a thing I have said before. Like oftentimes I feel like I'm playing a role. I'm playing like mother, I'm playing entrepreneur, I'm playing like female CEO. And I think none of those are all true, but none of them are the whole truth. Like we have many layers. I'm not the disco dress wearer from Greece in room 12 anymore, but there is a part of her like carefree adventure seeking that's still me. Like I can still sense her, you know what I mean? Even if I wear underpants, every day now. And the other piece was I just wanted to play with this idea of like time passing and change. Like I was hoping people would do exactly what they said they've been doing, which is like reflect a little bit about their own lives and what has transpired. And that I think was sort of my birthday gift to everyone else. Like I'm going through a transformation. I want to invite you into it with me and not feel like I'm doing this all by myself.
So you said you were relieved. Did you also experience pride and satisfaction?
Oh yeah. Because honestly, some of it came out better than I thought it could. And I did work with a couple of other fabricators who, like I told Jesse, who's been married to a team member of ours and is very, very skilled as an artist and has worked in set design like for theater companies before. This idea of wanting the grapefruit tree thing brought to life and that you could like climb under the boughs of it. And I had no idea. I don't know how to do that. That's not a thing I can do on my own. And so to see his imagination like recreate that and then physically be able to crawl under it was so cool. Like I feel so proud of the quality of what was put forth.
That's a very good word. It really was quality. It felt very intentional. It felt very polished. If it was vague, it was really because the person didn't have the backstory, but that's okay too, because they put their own story on it, which is what everyone does when they look at art anyways. How is this resonating? You just walk away and shrug your shoulders and say, well, I don't know what they were going for. That.
But don't you do that at every art exhibit? Like, aren't there parts of it that mean something to you and other parts that you're like, I don't care for that? You know what I mean?
Okay, well, the last question I have for you is, now what?
God, I don't know. It was
so big.
It was so big.
You've got to be feeling a certain amount of anticlimactic kind of.
No, I still feel good. I felt like even under the unpacking this week, that was on my mind because we had a deadline. We had to turn the keys over today, and so that felt like a hurried, kind of frenzied thing. Having done that this morning, I feel like okay, I need a little minute. Like that was a lot. I need to do laundry and kind of catch up on my life. But I don't think this is the last time I produce something like this. And I mean it. For anyone that comes along to other Milwaukee experiences, you will find new elements. Like I said to the team yesterday, this is the new standard. This is the new level. Now that I know we can produce something like this, like no more saying yes to, okay, we'll do a 10 by 10 tent and a linened table. You know what I mean? Like nothing is going to be sad and simple going forward.
And overdone.
and overdone. And I don't know. I mean, I think this is a thing I want to do again. I don't know if I want to, own the identity as an artist, but I definitely feel tapped into her. Like seeing all my old art and having it be on display, I felt like, oh, this has always been me. And I took a little pause from expressing it because I've been busy building a family and building businesses, but I don't want that part to go away. I don't want to wait another decade or two before I express that again in a real way, because I felt more, yes, I was obsessed and there were moments that were hard, but I have felt more alive in the last 4 months than I ever have in my whole life, and I don't want to let that go.
And I hope you don't, and I'm happy to hear that, because I know from my own experiences, and it just happened again last night and today for me. I was in a deep conversation with my husband over our Valentine's dinner about some financial things, because he is coming up to the age where it's really time for him to start claiming his pensions from the UK, where he worked for most of his life. Otherwise, he's just being foolish and leaving money on the table, but he's been being pretty slow to do it, and I was needling him a little bit about, I understand it's kind of complicated and there's a 6-hour time difference and no one picks up the phone anyways, and how are you going to get some very specific questions answered, like who do you pay the taxes to? Do you pay it to the UK? Do you pay it here? Can you pay it to just one place? So it's just a little bit complicated. But he finally confessed. He said, there's just something about collecting what you've saved that makes you realize that, oh, you got to the end. And then he threw the question back on me, and he said, when are we going to give up your bed and breakfast inn? And I was immediately saying, well, this is not about me. I'm asking you the question. But anyways, we made a soft commitment to the date when we're going to close. And it's still a ways away, but it's not undefined any longer. And this morning I had some cleaning to do there and to get ready for guests. It's a big weekend, obviously, with it being Valentine's and all that kind of stuff. And I was touching all the things thinking, well, what will become of this? Where will this go? And I was getting sadder and sadder and sadder. And when I finally sat down just to take a little break from cleaning, I thought, what is coming up for me? And the answer was, this has been the best job I've ever had. And I've had some good jobs. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about my career in science and academia and in laboratory medicine at all. It was something I was good at and was good to me. And I feel very satisfied about that career. And it doesn't bother me that it's over. I have a nice bookend on that. And I look back at that and have very positive feelings. But letting go of this, because it was much more fun and much more creative, and I just kept saying to myself, well, every time I'm looking at these things, and I made some very dolled up Valentine's cookies today for the guests, and I was thinking, but I won't do this anymore. I don't eat sweets like this. I would never do this for me. I get yelled at when I do this for my grandkids. What will I do? And I just thought, it's okay. It'll be fine. I just have to find the next way to be creative, because the essence of what that experience wasn't necessarily guests or a space or the fun parts or the swishing the toilets and not so much fun parts. It was the fact that alive with that creative juice flowing through you and out you and landing somewhere and being well received and having that feedback come back, which, just this wonderful loop. And I just thought to myself, okay, I have some time to think of what the next thing is. It's only if I don't come up with anything that this is going to be very traumatic. So I'm happy to hear you say that you don't have to know what it is, but you know something's lurking.
Yeah.
And if you can hold on to that feeling of just how high you feel and how wonderful you feel and how juiced up you feel when you are being creative, instead of soldiering through things or just feeling really, it's overdone, it's stale, it's boring, it's whatever. You've had a very powerful and potent and large dose of that. So I hope that you can ride that for a while and just always make sure that, life does tend to revert back to kind of, the ruts. That's just what happens. But, you have to notice that when it's happening and get out of those and sort of burst forth again onto the scene with a new iteration of the next cool creative thing to really just have the most amazing life.
Yeah, and I think, yes, and the other thing that's been so present for me this week is just how precious everything is. James came up the basement steps last night and dumped, a basket of laundry on that chair we dump all our laundry into. And I said, oh, look, it looks just like their art project. And he sort of like started to tear up and he was like, our life is just so precious. And I was like, it really is. Like, I just feel like I don't want to fold this laundry and I'm tired, you know what I mean? Or whatever. But like, what a blessing that like in this moment we live with these little children who are constantly changing their clothes, and there will be a moment in time when we don't have a mountain of laundry. Like, I feel like I can savor this project. Helped me realize like here's all the things I did, and this is what my moment is now, and that it'll pass just the way that the disco girl is gone. And I feel like I can access that and be smiling as I sift through all the laundry, knowing that like it won't be that long before they're not here and our house is quiet and we never change our clothes the way that they're constantly messing and making us have to run another load. And so that I feel really, really, really present to and really grateful for, because I think it's too easy, particularly in this stage of, all the trains having left the station, to feel overwhelmed and annoyed, like just absolutely annoyed about the fact that you have to clean toilets and everything else at the inn. I don't know. This was a gift. I can't say it any other way. This was an absolute gift, and I'm so proud of it, and I'm so happy about it, and I'm so, so, so excited that I was able to bring it forth.
Well, I'm going to turn now from your guest to your mother to say that I loved it, and I was very proud of you too. I didn't understand it as it was sort of developing, but I also thought I know enough about this to just trust the process. We will just go and we will experience it when it's done, and it will be clearer or it won't be. It doesn't really matter. But I thought it was really successful. It was extremely fun. I was there in costume because you did suggest to people that we should come as we were when we met you. So I was dressed in a costume that was mimicking a photo that we had resurrected for all of this, where I am pregnant with your sister and you are a little girl in the scene holding up your dress by the sides. And so I came in a costume that was me being pregnant, and everybody understood it right away. And it was really, really fun to have everyone come up to me and ask me what I thought. And some people come up and said, I need some help with this. What does that mean? And sometimes I could say, well, I think it means this, or here's my shared memory of that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'd say, I don't know. It beats me. I didn't know she didn't wear underwear when she went dancing in Greece either. But I'm very proud of you. And I thought it was just really spectacular. And I can't wait to see what's next.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, thank you, Mom, for coming on the show. And thank you for helping me unpack all of it. I really, really appreciate it. And for anyone else that didn't get to see it, there'll be more photos and videos coming out in the weeks to follow as we continue to figure out how to make sense of it all. So thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Bye.